Enough time has passed since the Deep of Night update has arrived. I've played with every single character extensively, so we're going to go ahead and rank every single one of them from worst to best and how well they perform in this specific game mode. Now, I did initially want to make this a solo-only list, but I have decided to actually incorporate solo and trios into this one list, even though if I were to make them separate, the list would actually look different. So if you actually care about one more so than the other, try to listen more to what I'm actually saying instead of the rankings themselves. Now, another aspect that actually goes into the ranking would actually be the depth. Like some characters at depth 1 or depth 2 actually might end up preferring a bit more compared to like the later depths. Now, most of my playtime has been in depth 4 and depth 5, so it is going to be speaking from that frame point. But if you do have your own findings from earlier depths, feel free to just comment down below. But yeah, with that out of the way, let's get started. Starting off at the bottom, we are going to talk about the Raider. Now, if this was just going to incorporate solo mode, then I probably would put him towards the bottom, but not necessarily at the bottom. But when it comes to team-based play, I think the Raider is just the worst character to use, because not only does he not really have much to help separate him from the other characters, he doesn't really offer much as a good teammate as well. Now, obviously, the thing that makes the Raider be the Raider is just going to be his tanking ability or just being able to trade out with other enemies. And with how hard things actually hit in this game mode, he can't really do that even when you are using the skill Retaliate, which does give him a whole bunch of damage negation, and it can still help prevent death blows, so there are certain circumstances where it can be very useful, but you still end up taking a whole bunch of damage when using the skill that is just not going to be that viable. Because typically how you want to play around this character is just constantly trading out with enemies with slower types of weapons and just keep using the skill every single time that you get it active. But it feels like for 90% of the attacks, I just want to be able to dodge them instead of trading out with them. And with how valuable things like damage negation at full HP or successive attacks negate damage are in this game mode, it kind of just renders the entire playstyle of the Raider obsolete. Now, you could very well just play this character with some quicker types of strength weapons like hammers or fists, but the thing is, these weapon types will literally just do more damage with the Wilder, and the Wilder will also get a much better set of skills. From the passive, character skill, and ultimate, the Wilder just clears. Because yeah, as I mentioned with the Raider, the character skill isn't going to really offer much value, even if you do incorporate the new relic that does debuff enemies, which I don't really know why the initial stomp of the skill doesn't actually apply the debuff and only when you hit with the headbutt. I feel like that would make much more sense. But also, his ultimate ability is borderline useless. Yes, it's still going to do some okay damage in an AoE, it is still going to stagger some larger bosses and Night Lord bosses, but it just pales in comparison to almost everybody else's ultimates when it comes to team-based play. Like, yes, it still can give everyone a weapon damage boost. It's not going to boost the damage of the spells, which is unfortunate. But everyone else's ult is just so much more useful. And it's to the point that the only playstyle that I really cared to play with the Raider was the initial standard attack build. But even then, that does involve using some slower weapons that are pretty risky, and you're still going to be stuck with his pretty average abilities. Number 7, the Revenant. Now, when it comes to the Revenant in the base game, I think she's perfectly fine. There will be like some tweaks that I would like to change about her abilities, but for the most part, they're okay. However, I think my biggest issue with the Revenant is going to be that the seals and like the incantation options are just pretty shit. Like the guaranteed spells that you get off the seals, like the Finger Seal coming with Rejection, or the Giant Seal coming with Flame Sling, the Dragon Communion Seal with Dragonfire. They're all just not that good of options, and also the incantation pool is just littered with a whole bunch of useless support-based spells that people are just really never going to use. So the chances of you actually finding a really good spell with the Revenant is going to be pretty far and few. Options like Black Flame and Lightning Spear can be okay, but in the grand scheme of things, they're not going to really pair that well when compared to things like Shattering Crystal or even Carrion Slicer, and even compared to some of the Shadow of the Erdtree spells. Like, those are some of the best incantations in the entire game, and they're just not here. And when it comes to the Deep of Night game mode, this problem is still there, but it did get counteracted by the fact that you can have so many amazing relic perks that can have your spell damage just be absurd. Every single one of those spell school boosting relics can actually appear in these deep relics too. And there are also additional perks like +2 incantation or +2 affinity attack power, and it can just make your spell damage just be ridiculous. And still staying on the topic of the relics, her new unique relic that actually adds a whole bunch more strength to this character while only losing a little bit of faith is just a massive benefit. Like, you should pretty much always have this relic equipped at all times because it allows her to actually have more strength than a character like the Guardian, but it only ends up losing a little bit of faith to the point where it's only like 5% spell damage. So some of the FP problems that people might face when it comes to using the Revenant, that can be counteracted just by picking up a strength weapon and using her as a hybrid character, and she does very well in that regard. Now, obviously, based on everything that I've said so far, she is going to be very RNG heavy. She's going to be very RNG heavy in terms of finding the correct spells that you want, and also very RNG heavy based on the relics that you want to be able to find. But obviously, the biggest downside when it comes to the Revenant and this specific game mode is that she can't even use her main character skill that reliably. Like, the appeal of the Revenant is just being able to summon some Spirit Ashes that can actually help take aggro while you fully charge your incantations, which tend to have like longer animations and not as much mobility when compared to sorceries. You could just be able to use them a lot more safer with your summons active. But in this game mode, they just get destroyed extremely quickly. Like, even random trash mobs just two-shot every single one of these summons, even if you are at like a higher level. I don't really know why FromSoft didn't really think of ways to actually have the Raider and the Revenant have their character skills be like balanced for this game mode. But yeah, they're very much borderline useless. And combined with her having the least amount of health out of all the characters, she's also going to have to get lucky with multiple damage negation passives just to be able to survive a hit. Now, the reasons why I do think that she is better than the Raider is because of, one, she can get a lot more damage, as I mentioned earlier, and also her passive ability and her ultimate ability are a lot better in this game mode compared to the regular game mode. Starting off with her passive ability that actually allows her to turn enemies into allies. This thing can be utterly broken in depth 4 and depth 5, because the enemies are actually going to be doing a lot more damage and they aren't really that tanky in return. So when you end up turning one of these enemies into an ally, they can do ridiculous amounts of damage for you. Like, I've had times where I actually ended up having a trash mob just do way more damage to the end of day 2 boss than I could have ever have done. Now, once again, this passive is going to be reliant on RNG. I kind of wish it actually just happened a bit more often, especially because this passive is very much useless in day 3. But her ultimate art is obviously amazing to have in this game mode, because it just has you and all of your allies around you just be able to survive for like the next 20 or so seconds. And it can also fully revive people from very far distances. It can also keep your summons alive too. And also combined with the relic ability that actually boosts the damage of your allies as well. Revenant's ultimates can actually be like one of the most useful in this game mode. But yeah, unfortunately, based on her RNG and like the useless character skill, it kind of has me put it as lower on the list. Number 6, I'm going to touch on the Guardian. Now, the Guardian has always been a character that has received a lot of slack, and it's mainly been because of his damage. But in this game mode, in Deep of Night, that is not an issue anymore. In fact, out of all the strength-based characters, he can easily get the most damage out of everybody. And that's purely based on the relics that you can acquire. There is a particular relic out there that just gives him a bunch more strength and dexterity, and he can even outdamage the Wilder with these like strength and dexterity based weapons. And the only drawback that it has is that it pretty much has his health be in line with the Wilders now. And also combined with all of these +2 guard countering boosts that like offer 26% more guard counter damage, yeah, he can be kind of ridiculous when it comes to the damage department. It is like his abilities are bad at all either. The character skill can be nice at stun locking, his ultimates can instantly revive all of your allies, and have the potential to heal them up too. And he has a passive ability that allows him to just like block entire enemy or boss combos, which in this game mode is great. You don't have to run the risk of having to time enemy attacks and dodge them all the time. So with all that being said, you might be wondering, how the hell is the Guardian getting lower on the list? And that's because of one singular reason: his dodge. His dodge is so unfathomably dog shit, he might as well just not even have it. Like, it was designed to be so bad that they've basically forced a character into the blocking-based playstyle. But the thing is about the blocking-based playstyle, even though it is really good, it's only going to be good and useful in like half the areas of the game, because there are plenty of attacks out there that you either just can't block or are going to be doing a lot of elemental damage. And you can't block elemental damage that well, doesn't matter what shield that you have. If you're in depth 4 and depth 5 and you try to block these like hard Night Lord elemental types of attacks, you're just going to be getting hit for like half your health. And it's just like not worth it ever. If you're fighting bosses like Everdark Gladius or Hylster, Sentient Pest, like basically any Night Lord boss that does some elemental damage, it's pretty much an instant GG. Because I guarantee you're not going to have a very fun time trying to dodge those attacks instead. And also with enemies hitting a lot harder, they're also going to be doing a lot more stamina damage too. So you can't really block for as long as you could used to. And it also means you have to like prioritize getting a purple stone like right at the beginning of the game, just so you can actually like block some basic enemy combos. And even then, when you do have a purple shield and are in the passive, you're still going to have to go in and out of the passive stance just to be able to regenerate your stamina, because there's that stupid concept of having your stamina be drained when you're in the passive stance. And there's so many times that the thing has gotten me killed because I have to go in and out of the stance, which just takes more time. And with how much stamina charged guard counters consume, the playstyle just feels horrible against a lot of different bosses out there. And I can go on forever talking about how much I hate this passive ability stance. Like, I've never really had a problem with it beforehand, but using it in depths 4 and 5 has made me hate it so much. Number 5, I'm going to go with the Recluse. Now, yes, the Recluse's damage can be ridiculous, probably the highest in the entire game, in like the regular base game mode and in this game mode as well. Because as I mentioned earlier with the Revenants, there are a bunch more just like relic perks that you can get, like this sorcery boosting stuff or affinity damaging stuff, and all the, like the spell schools can also be on the deep relics as well. So having your relics just go all into damage can make it be to where it doesn't even feel like you're playing a depth 5 run. And combined with her way to just pretty much have infinite FP, and since like the recent updates, her character skill has gotten a lot better in terms of damage across the board with all the different cocktail mixes. She is a very solid character to play when it comes to a team-based format. Because yeah, when it comes to solo play, it's definitely not the character to run. For starters, she does have tied for the lowest amount of health in the entire game. She is also not going to have high dexterity at all, so her casting speed is pretty slow. And typically when you are playing the Recluse, you want to be able to use like those like hard-hitting, long-range type of spells that might require a bit of like charging up. Also, her cocktail mixes, even though they have recently gotten buffed to spell time, they're still pretty slow to use in like a lot of different areas in solo play. She can be a very rough and challenging character to play throughout the entire expedition, and she is very reliant on actually having teammates just take the aggro, absorb some damage, and is letting you being able to like fully charge your spells. And also her ultimate ability is much better off in a team-based format because it is inherently just going to boost the damage of you and all of your allies, and give them some nice utility in health regen and FP regen, but it also just doesn't last long enough in solo play because sometimes you're having to like dodge the boss's moveset for half of it and you're not really benefiting off the actual buff itself. But I think the biggest nail in the coffin for this character is going to be that I just consider her somewhat outclassed by the Duchess. Now yes, the Duchess isn't going to be able to do as much damage as the Recluse, but the Duchess does have a bit more health. She has a much better dodge that is very easy to use. She also starts off with a lot more dexterity, so she can just cast spells a lot faster. And she also has a much better character skill in Restage. And with the ability of Restage, she can actually outdamage the Recluse. Now obviously Restage isn't always going to be active, and she does lose out on the utility of having to like constantly regenerate your FP. So with certain types of hard-hitting spells, you're not going to really be able to use them for as long as you can compared to the Recluse. So there are pros and cons for both, and the Recluse can be an extremely powerful character, but just a few too many downsides for me to put it higher on the list. Number 4, we're going to go with the Executor. Now, the Executor doesn't do anything bad at all. He has like middle of the pack types of health and stamina. He actually is the highest damaging melee character with his S scaling in dexterity and arcane. He also does start off with the katana and is more likely to find them, and katanas are probably one of the better weapon types in the game due to them being very quick, having nice range, and also coming with passive status effects, which status effects are extremely powerful. And him being able to start off with the katana is one of the major positives, because like the best thing about the Executor is that he doesn't require any RNG whatsoever. There are a couple of different builds that you can use with the Executor, the most popular one being just having the Sentient Pest and the Caligo boss relic, because it is just going to allow you to have access to Bleed, Poison, and Frost. And having your third relic slot be something for like Evergel or Night Invader is just the best bet. Because being that you don't actually need to find another weapon and that your starting katana is already amazing, all you got to do is just go through a tunnel, get a purple stone, and then you have an S tier weapon. So you're going to spend the rest of the time just doing Evergels or doing the Night Invader stuff just to get a bunch more damage. And the best thing is all these relics are guaranteed to be acquired. There's like no RNG involved at all. Now when it does come to this game mode and the new relics, there are some that he is definitely going to benefit off, mainly the ones that just make you do more damage to enemies that are afflicted with status effects like Poison and Rot, +1 and +2 versions, and those will actually stack together. And also just being able to have access to poison is definitely going to help out fellow IRONEYE players because they do have that poison-based relic that they're running a lot, so you can be a nice teammate in that regard too. But that's pretty much going to be where the Executor peaks. Like, he's a very good character because he can guarantee just getting good stuff. The only times where he might differ when it comes to RNG-based builds is if you're going to have to rely on getting like a good seppuku relic, because like the seppuku and frost-based setup is actually pretty good too. Which, speaking of which, being that he has such great synergy with the Kaligo boss relic, he can actually guarantee a stealth-based option and being able to turn invisible in many different circumstances, and this is extremely powerful in this game mode. But the biggest downsides when it comes to the Executor is going to be, one, his set of abilities. If you're not using seppuku, his passive ability is like borderline useless. It is a little bit better in this game mode because there are like lots of ways to proc status effects on yourself, but I wouldn't ever build around it. And the new relic that does offer some health regen can offset it a little bit, but it's still not that much more to make it be like the best in slot. And also his character skill is just useless, but it was pretty much useless in the base game as well. Like, there's some nice utility there to be able to like deflect certain types of like smaller humanoid enemies like Crucible Knights or maybe Banished Knights. But outside of that, I'd never really used this character skill. I think this thing just needs to be like just wiped. Honestly, like the deflecting base playstyle just does not suit a katana in Elden Ring. But when it does come to his ultimate ability, it can be pretty nice. It's definitely helpful for clearing out those like gank Evergel bosses. But when you're actually trying to use it while roaming around is pretty much a death sentence. So the way I always like to use it, even in like the regular base mode, is that I just pop my ult and I immediately use like the big claw skill just to remove it automatically. But even then, that can be pretty risky sometimes. So like half the time that I use this ultimate ability is pretty much like for a free flask, and like that's about it. But another big downside for the Executor is that there are new relics that can actually help you find certain weapon types with the dormant powers. And you can slap on something like dormant powers help you find katanas on the IRONEYE, and you could literally have a better melee dexterity character, because when you're fighting enemies that are marked and you're using the katana, you can actually outdamage the Executor. And combined with the fact that his entire set of abilities are extremely useful, and that he does have access to ranged-based attacks as well, I think this makes him the better dexterity character. But I don't think he's completely outclassed because, as I mentioned, the Executor is a character that requires no good RNG. Number 3, we are going to go with the Duchess. Now, as I kind of mentioned earlier with the Recluse, I do consider the Duchess to just be a better like spellcasting type of character, being that she is better suited for close range combat and ranged combat with her faster casting speed and much better dodge. The only issue is going to be like the lack of FP. But if you ever end up running a carrion slicer build and running something like dormant staves, so you are more likely to find some staves, then there's probably not going to be any character better than the Duchess. Like, she is extremely broken with carrion slicer, but once again, it is going to require a little bit of decent RNG. But honestly, just going with any like hybrid spell-based playstyle with the Duchess is perfectly fine. Just use your hardest hitting spells until you run out of FP, and then you can just use any dexterity weapon, preferably with status effects, because she has a really powerful skill in restage that can pretty much repeat like 60% of the damage all over again, and that can include status effect procs. And for the base game, the only real downsides that the Duchess did have was going to be her lack of health, and that her ultimate ability didn't really offer much. But for one, the ultimate ability is actually pretty useful in this game mode because enemies are hitting really hard, even trash mobs. So just being able to go invisible and like going through some like ruins or forts and not having to aggro enemies that can potentially one-shot you can be a very big deal. And with how often people are getting downed, you can actually just use it as a reviving tool to just go invisible and revive your allies. And with her having not much health isn't going to really be the biggest downside, because even the Nightfarers that have lots of health are kind of getting one-shot anywhere at depth 4 and depth 5. And the Duchess can honestly be the best character to have if you have a couple of damage negation at full HP perks, because she has an absolutely broken dodge. Like, you can chain the first 2 dodges back to back and extend the iframes and dodge so many attacks. And the fact that her passive ability also just allows her to just consume less stamina for all of her attacks and all of her dodges just makes her extremely easy to play with. Like, the only reason why I'm not going to put her much higher is because 1, the IRONEYE is broken, and 2, it requires a bit of RNG. Like, you need some RNG to get some decent spells like Shattering Crystal or Carrion Slicer, and also potentially getting things like damage negation at full HP, and also not getting repeated evasions lower damage negation too. Number 2, we're going to go with the WYLDER. Now, honestly, I kind of wanted to put this one at number 1 because if there is a character that I am going to recommend for people to play if you are like a beginner, it's going to be the WYLDER because everything that he does is just so good and so well tuned for this game mode that he's such a like an easy and safe pick to go with. And like the only reason why I didn't put him at number 1 is because you don't necessarily need a WYLDER on your team. Like it's good to have at least like one character that can have a decent amount of health and maybe tank at least one attack, and that is pretty interchangeable. You can actually have someone like the Guardian as well and be perfectly fine. But I think the value of having an IRONEYE on your team with that mark ability, I think is a bit too great. So that was the only reason why the WYLDER got number 2. But yeah, basically everything that the WYLDER can do is just amazing. He probably has the best scalings in the entire game with some of the most health, decent amount of stamina, probably some of the best damaging stats for a melee character too. With his very high strength and decent dexterity scaling, he can pretty much use any weapon in the entire game. So you don't really need good RNG, like any decent purple weapon that you can pick up is just going to be good with the WYLDER no matter what. Now when it comes to the relics, there aren't really too many like obvious relics that the WYLDER can run. In solo play, I like to go with the critical attack build. I find that pretty fun. But honestly, you can go any which way with the WYLDER. All of his character specific perks are extremely powerful. Like all 5 of them are really good. You can find great success with all of them. Just going all into tanking and survivability with like more health or damage negation. None of those things are going to be bad at all. There aren't going to be too many things out there that can really help him have like really high damage and like melt enemies and bosses really quickly, which might be like his only downside. Like he's still going to get good damage. It's just not going to be broken amounts of damage. But the main thing that makes him incredible is just going to be his set of skills. His passive ability is one of the best in the entire game because it allows him to cheat death, which in this game mode, when you're getting one shot, that's like pretty much having an extra wending grace between every single grace. Like that's how good it is. And his character skill, although isn't that flashy, it can help you get from A to B very quickly. And with how tanky some of these enemies can be, it means that you're getting to these points of interest faster and just having more time to fight these bosses. Also, there's plenty of like really annoying AoEs that these Night Lord bosses have that are easily countered with the grapple hook. And that is you have a relic that can actually proc bleed with a grapple hook is fantastic utility. And then he has an ultimate attack that can just easily stagger so many enemies and bosses, do amazing damage, almost always result in a stance break so you can get a critical hit. And there's all these other relics out there that can actually get your ultimate back a lot quicker now. Like he's just a flawless character with pretty much no downsides and you can just never go wrong with using him. But yeah, at number 1, we're going to go the RENIE. What else is new? Nothing's changed. He's still the best character. And honestly, he's only gotten better since Deep of Night. Now, yes, he is going to be somewhat squishy. Not going to have like the lowest amount of health, but it is going to be on the lower end. He does have a decent dexterity scaling, just a bit lower than the Executor. He's also going to start off with bows and be more likely to find bows, which the RENIE with the bow moveset is just so good. It's a pretty fast moveset. It's actually going to output some decent damage. You have the infinite arrows. And this like range-based playstyle can just be broken in solo because you don't have to actually engage with bosses and just sitting at a safer distance. I don't think I need to describe how that's really good. Now, when it comes to trios, this bow-based playstyle isn't going to be the best. Like, bow damage is okay, but it's not going to be amazing DPS. And compared to other range-based characters like the spellcasting characters, they're just going to end up being better to use. Because if other allies are going to be taking the aggro anyway, you might as well end up going with the harder hitting projectile users. However, the RENIE does not have to use bows. He can also just use melee weapons too. My melee RENIE build involves using the dormant katanas relic, so I'm more likely to find katanas, and then I just have a bow in my left hand to just have as a projectile option when needed, and I just one-hand my katana and just use that to actually get some decent damage. Because yeah, the bows can be fine, but katanas are just gonna hit harder. Now yes, the Executor can do more damage with the katanas, unless you actually account for the mark ability. Because yeah, his character skill in marking is probably the best character skill in the entire game. It is an insane iframing dodge, which already has amazing utility, but it can also damage enemies, and it also leaves a debuff for enemies to take 10% more damage, and if enough damage is dealt, then it actually explodes, it staggers them, does a whole bunch of damage and stance damage. It's just ridiculous. And there's also a relic that can give you a second use of this skill for some reason, but on top of that, they actually added a new relic that adds poison to this attack, and when enemies are poisoned and you hit them with this effect, they take a chunk of percentage damage on top of that, which is just ridiculous. Like, yes, it has just recently gotten nerfed, but it still is amazing and definitely is the best in slot for all like these deep relic slots. And it's going all into a poison build and having damage up against poisoned enemies. You can not only just have access to a broken dodge and broken damage, but you can also support your teammates too. And I didn't even talk about his ultimate attack that clears out the entire room, can also revive allies very easily. hit multiple bosses at once at very far distances, and also his passive ability that just gives everyone just boosted item discovery, so you're more likely to find like rarer types weapons and wending graces. Yeah, he was the best character in the game before the update, and he's still the best character in the game now. Anyway, that is us now done and completed. As always, let me know what your opinions are down in the comments below. If you do like this type of content, we are going to be making a whole bunch more. There's some like more ranking videos I do want to touch on with the deeper than night stuff. If you haven't already followed me on Twitch, definitely do that because I'm live there basically every day, testing out different builds, playing with other content creators. So definitely do give me a follow there and also join the Discord if you actually wanted to ask me questions too. Anyway, catch you guys around. See yous.